Hi, I'm George Maschke with antipolygraph.org, and I'd like to speak with you about the recent decision of the U.S. government to start using in Afghanistan, and later Iraq, a handheld lie detector. This was mentioned in an MSNBC report by investigative reporter Bill Dedman, which you can find online at truth.msnbc.com. This lie detector is formally called the Preliminary Credibility Assessment Screening System, and what it consists of is a little handheld computer with attachments that connect to the fingers of the person who's being questioned, and it measures sweating and heart rate and blood pressure. And so it's basically a mini polygraph. It doesn't have the pneumotubes that would measure breathing. Now, you should be aware, and especially those of you who might be called on to use this device to question people who are being considered for access to U.S. military facilities, or people suspected of participation in bombings or other actions against U.S. forces, that these tests don't work. It's really emperor's new clothes technology that you've been given to use, and you need to understand the truth about lie detectors. In 2002, the National Academy of Sciences did a thorough research review of the evidence on polygraphs, and they found polygraph screening to be completely invalid. In fact, they recommended that the U.S. government not use it to screen its personnel for security matters. Nonetheless, in the aftermath of September 11th, our government disregarded that report entirely and continued using lie detectors. In fact, they even expanded their reliance on them. Now they're giving you this handheld lie detector to use to question people on very important matters where, granted, it's hard to know the truth. It's hard to do a background investigation on someone who you're hiring, say in Afghanistan or Iraq. But this test is ridiculous, and you really should not rely on it, and I hope that I'll be successful in persuading you of that. So first, I'd say see Bill Dedman's report for initial coverage of it. Then see the National Academy of Sciences review of the lie detector. It's called the Polygraph and Lie Detection. You'll find it online. Again, the Polygraph and Lie Detection. Now, it's also important to realize that the testing of this handheld lie detector, the PCASS, was conducted under such conditions as to maximize its apparent reliability. It was done in laboratory conditions with role players who did a simple make-believe crime and then were questioned about it. There was no jeopardy. They didn't suffer any consequences if they were wrongly found deceptive. And under such circumstances, the so-called test will perform better than under real conditions where people are scared of what's going to happen to them if they're not believed. And another fundamental flaw of the testing of this procedure is that no consideration was given to the possibility of countermeasures or techniques for beating the test. Now, you might think, well, ignorant people in Afghanistan and Iraq, they don't know anything about countermeasures or how to beat a lie detector test. Well, you'd be wrong about that. As antipolygraph.org has documented, Al-Qaeda knows something about lie detector tests and how to fool them. If you look up Al-Qaeda and polygraph on Google, you'll find that documentation, and you'll see that they read English too, and they can figure these things out. You might well get, so someone who gets a green light on this lie detector test isn't necessarily telling the truth. Apart from the unreliability of the test, you might be being beat. And the Department of Defense didn't test this lie detector's robustness against countermeasures. I think that's really shameful, irresponsible, and could end up costing us dearly. Finally, the last point I'd like to make, it's been suggested that this handheld lie detector is just a guide, it's just a tool that no final decision should be made based on the results of this test. But the test being invalid, its results should not be relied on at all. And in fact, to the extent that any reliance is placed on it, it's likely to misdirect investigations and cause worse decision making than if you were to just totally disregard it and not do these stupid tests to begin with. And the late David Lickin, a polygraph critic who wrote the book A Tremor in the Blood, Uses and Abuses of the Lie Detector, which is, I think, the best book ever written on polygraphy and lie detectors. He described this tendency to over-rely on tests that have a yes-no answer, like this handheld lie detector, which is going to give a green light if they pass and a red light if they fail. Here's what Lickin says on this. Uncertainty is painful to the decision maker. Complicated evidence can only be evaluated subjectively, and subjectivity leads to doubt and disagreement. One longs for some straightforward, definitive datum that will resolve the conflict and impel a conclusion. This longing not infrequently leads one to invest any simple, quantitative, or otherwise specific bit of evidence with a greater weight than it deserves, with a predictive power that it does not really possess. In decision-making, the objective dominates the subjective, the simple squeezes out the complicated, the quantitative gets more weight than the non-metrical, and dichotomous, yes-no, pass-fail evidence supersedes the many-valued. This is Lickin's law, and it's going to apply to any reliance put on this test, which I strongly urge all involved in the theaters of conflict to avoid doing. You may be given this device, but you don't have to place any reliance on it. You've been sold a bill of goods. Wake up.